Here, let's do this one, and I'll talk about the other one in just a second. Can you read it? Yeah. After all this time, is Conor still relevant enough to headline a pay-per-view card without a title fight? And is he a good candidate for the White House card exactly because he is not? No need to sell tickets, but the spectacle combined with his persona will draw the pay-per-views. P.S. He, by the way, just today, oh yeah, I'm well aware, lost his Nikita Hand case appeal. So the gladiator goes from a courtroom and into the White House to entertain the emperor. Let me ask a very basic question to all of you watching, which is, what is the appeal of Conor McGregor anymore? I know what someone's going to tell me. They're going to read back to me, oh, he's still popular according to these audiences, right? I get that. I'm asking you, what is the appeal? He is, in my opinion, I don't know the man, but from everything I can tell, he seems to be a terrible person. Like a genuinely. Did you guys follow this appeals case? So first of all, he loses pretty soundly in the regular one, and then he immediately goes into an appeal, and the appeals had one procedural ground which doesn't merit even worth talking about, but the head of the appeals case, so Nikita Hand had bruises all over her, right? That's according to the testimony of the intake nurse who took her at the medical facility where she checked in following the incident in that December 2018 hotel in Ireland. And according to the nurse who was the intake nurse, it was bruising so substantial, it was the most she'd ever seen in her life. Okay. There had to be a theory of how that got there. And Nikita Hand's team's theory was that Conor McGregor, in their estimation, sexually assaulted her. Conor had no real theory for what had happened to her, and his team had no theory. They had initially floated during the trial itself that, hey, she was partying for a long time that weekend. She was on some kind of bender. Who knows? Who knows what happens on a bender? And, it's true that people who are partying for long periods of time tend to have disheveled appearances, but that's not really a great explanation for the kind of bruising that a medical professional, particularly ones involved in like rape crisis centers, describe, right? I mean, it was a very specific and extensive kind of markings that were apparently head to toe, is the way it was also described. So one entity has a theory for how that got there, and the other one doesn't. The appeals case was about Conor saying, aha, I got these two jamokes who they are going to sign an affidavit, and they're going to make a claim that what we saw was Nikita Hand's partner at that time physically assaulting her, right? Or at least I think one maybe said they saw her and one maybe said they heard it, but they were in proximity to it in order to bear witness to it. And then at the 11th hour, right before the appeals case is supposed to go forward, they withdraw it. And it is so suspicious that the court then says, you know what, we're going to investigate this because it's shady. It's shady that you had made these claims and then at the 11th hour you withdraw them. Now, my understanding is, from what I understand, Conor himself is not necessarily being investigated, but the folks who did, it appears, are, and God knows who else. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is the whole thing failed fucking spectacularly. And then he tried a couple of procedural grounds today, and those were roundly dismissed as well. And then he was ordered to pay €2 million, which were Nikita Hand's legal costs. He's got to pay all of that as well, too. Guys, he appears to be a terrible person. You could list that. You could list the Italian DJ. You could list the old man in the bar. You could list the woman who had to jump off of his yacht for similar claims related to the kind that Nikita Hand had made, amongst numerous other run-ins with the law and or vulnerable people. Then you can add in the fact that he hasn't competed in a presidential cycle. He's well past it at this point. I guess I've got to be honest with you. Like, it's not like I don't understand the nature of the Conor McGregor questions, because I don't think people have really just thought about, hey, what value actually is he? He is of very marginal value at this point. And I realize that MMA is in a place where you're like, well, don't we need as many headliners as we possibly can get? Yeah, that's true. Why him? Why him? Like, it's very difficult for me to understand why Greg Hardy got, and I'm not mad that people didn't like him and with, oh, he's a woman beater, blah, 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 blah. It's like, what would be the evidence that, and I realize that part of it is that Greg Hardy's case was a criminal case and that Connor's was a civil one, but there's asterisks around that as well. More to the point, based on what we understand about the available evidence, it is not as if Connor's evidence relative to Greg Hardy's is in any way better. And in fact, you could make the argument that it's actually much worse. So I mean, I'm going to keep asking, it's like, what are we holding on to here? Like, I just don't get it. The guy is awful. And I understand that people are like, oh, what you want, MMA fighters to be Boy Scouts? No, I recognize that they're going to be rough around the edges. I've got a pretty reasonable leash about this kind of thing. Like what is permissible? You do have to permit, rough and tumble characters. Do you have to permit absolute dirtbags? I mean, especially ones who are, in terms of like professional fighting, for the last 4 years, almost exclusively irrelevant. And on the downswing, and by the way, trying to recover from this like terrible injury. Like, there's so many reasons to just walk away from it versus the reasons to hang on to it. I don't know. It's just weird for me to watch like whose crimes or misdeeds do we get to decide are like disqualifying from the fan base doesn't get to like you anymore. And then the ones that they're just like, okay, he's got a million of these, but we just still like him anyway. And I don't know, like when it comes to Jon Jones, I mean, his situation obviously is not identical to Connor's. I'm not, there's meaningful differences, but it's another one. It's like, oh, he's back in the testing pool. Who gives a shit? Who cares? He's a terrible person. And, one of the most textbook cases of ducking I've ever seen. Like, his retirement ended early. Who gives a shit? Who cares? There is not enough willingness inside MMA to turn the page on irrelevant dirtbags. And I really wish there was. Max says, are you excited Trump is going to force the name change back to the Redskins? I don't know if he is. Hopefully he forces Kirk Cousins and Dan Snyder's back as well. Go Cowboys. Yeah, I don't think he is. He doesn't have the authority to do that, which doesn't mean that it couldn't happen by more soft power terms. But I don't think it's going to be relevant anyway, because I think that this deal will get passed it's about to be voted on either, I think, tomorrow or next week. I think maybe next week by the DC City Council, the agreement between the city itself and the Commanders. I think it'll get passed. So I just don't think it's going to be relevant one way or the other. Also, he doesn't have I understand that he'll just do things that aren't legal, but like by the letter of the law, he has no authority here. So, again, it's one of the situations where it's like he might do something, but is it even legal? And if it's not, I mean, this is the thing about the name change. It's like, dude, let me explain something to you. Here is the problem with the Redskins Commanders thing. Okay. As someone who lives here, there are an endless number of people who live here. I won't say endless, but there's a vocal minority of people who live here who are desperate to go back to the last name, to the Redskins name. And let me say something. Obviously, I grew up on that name, right? I've said the word a million times. Number one. Number two, nobody likes the name Commanders. Everybody hates it, including me. Nobody likes it. That's the second problem. The third problem is, the Commanders is not just a bad name. It's still associated with Dan Snyder. That's another issue. And there are people who think that the Redskins name got changed due strictly to cancel culture, which is not true. But the one thing that they do have on their side, the people who are wanting to go back to the name, is that to the best of the available data that we have, which there is some question about it, but is there data that shows that at a bare minimum, Native Americans are split in terms of their support for use of the name? Yes. It is absolutely true that there is not, universal or even near universal condemnation by various Native American populations that have been polled, to the best of my knowledge, right? Now, there are many that don't like it. In fact, I think the majority probably don't, but there's a significant amount of them who, again, to the best of my knowledge, are totally okay with it. And so this makes the debate a little bit strange, But here is the fucking problem. And this is the thing that I just, does nobody think past stage one? Do these morons who think that if you go back to the old name, what would happen the day after that? Do they think that all of the coordinated interests who don't like that name, by the way, many of them Native American groups, and again, whether they speak for all Native Americans is its own issue, but these were people who for year after year after year were writing op-eds and showing up at protests at games and, you know, trying to get meetings with legislators. Like, do they think that that just, they won't do that anymore? You have to be able to think long term. The Josh Harris group, to the best of my knowledge, what they're trying to do is bring the city together. And I know that some people think going back to the old name is that. It is not. It is not. If you are trying to be the kind, like, dude, the Dan Snyder era was not just an era of failure on the football field, but it was about the division and strife and anger and bitterness that just bled out from there. This ownership group is trying to do the opposite of that. They're trying to lean into the parts of the history that are widely palatable. But what I think that they don't want to do is have fucking protesters showing up at their goddamn games the instant they go back to an old name, which is going to fucking happen. They're going to have the same. We did this shit already. We had this fucking debate. And the problem is there are enough people who are Native and other interested parties who don't fucking like it and are simply not going to let it go. And if the way in which you're trying to govern your organization is to be maximally appealing at a time where after 30 years people didn't have that, it seems fucking moronic beyond words to think you're going to go back to a term that brings all of that strife and turmoil right back to their front door. It's fucking stupid. It's fucking stupid. Nobody likes commanders, and I recognize there is some diversity of opinion on the term Redskins, but one carries a shit ton of baggage and will for the foreseeable future if you bring it up, and one simply doesn't. And we're trying to move past and from an era of division. Why the fuck would you invite strife into your life if what you're trying to do is pivot away from all of that? So they got to figure out a better name, because the one we have sucks and I don't defend it and I don't like it. But going back to the other one, this is the only people who bring this up are people who cannot think past stage one. We're just going to have it back and everyone's going to be cool again. You fucking idiot. You idiot. That is absolutely not what would happen. Those people will be at those games protesting for as long as there is air in their fucking lungs, because that's exactly what they did on the other side of it. What are you talking about?